Content analysis. This week I asked a small sample. I could have chosen from my class members, work associates, friends, family members. I asked my friends and I was looking for at least 5 responses. I had 8. The question that I asked them was, what are your career aspirations for the next 5 years? The results that I received were continue my career as a neonatologist, and I guess get promoted to associate professor. Working on that now. Find a way to maximize family time with my work time. Find another career path within nursing and leave the bedside. Continue to grow into my CEO role and build a 20-person company. Grow my new company to working with others so I actually start making money. Publish a book. This all came from someone who has previously published 1 book and also co-authored a 2nd textbook that's been published. A supply chain manager, senior buyer, and finance controller. So in looking at those results, the first thing I needed to do was determine what the appropriate unit is for that content analysis. So my choices were syntactical, which is participant chosen word choices, referential, to what the participant refers when describing an object, propositional, assertions about an object, and thematic, topics and themes represented in the text. Now this is a pretty easy one, very obvious that thematic was the appropriate unit. So that is the one that I used. And the themes I chose out of those responses were role change, promotion, organizational growth, and career prestige. Before I get into what the frequency was for each of those themes, I do want to give a little bit of information about the participants just so that we understand, the quality of this information and potential for variances based on the participant variations. So the 8 participants are all educated. They all have 4-year degrees or multiple 4-year degrees or advanced degrees, ranging up to as much as a PhD. They've all been professionally employed in their career field for 4+ years. They have all had stable employment prior to and during the pandemic. 4 of these participants have significant autonomy over their work schedule and work location. 1 of them is an hourly employee. 5 of the participants, 7 of the participants are married and have dual incomes in their household, with a gross household income over $120,000. They all have, and 6 of them have children under the age of 18. 2 of the participants own their own business, and their fields of expertise span from 2 in the medical field, 3 in business, 2 engineers, and 1 educator. So the reason I share that is simply to demonstrate that these are all individuals with fairly successful, stable, they're sort of mid-career, mid or even late, well, nobody's really late career, but they're definitely not entry level in their career. They all are in stable relationships. And I think one of the important things is that they all had stable employment prior to and during the pandemic, because had they not had stable employment or their jobs have been at risk and it was, very tumultuous, that would definitely sway career goals. And I think we do see that in the 1 person who is an hourly employee, because she's both an hourly employee and she is in the medical field. And that is the participant who wants to find a pretty significant role change. She wants to stay in nursing but leave the bedside. And that is largely what I know of her personal background, and logically makes sense because of what we've seen in the pandemic and the impact on the medical community. She was definitely exposed to a lot of the additional stress and challenges of the medical field. So, but again, her work was stable. She was never at risk for not having an income or losing a home or anything like that. And then that's the scenario for all of the participants, that they all are financially stable and roughly mid-career and educated. So, going back to the results, the analysis of the themes, role change, we saw that frequency once, and then promotion, we saw that frequency 4 times. So the individual looking to become a finance controller, a senior buyer, a supply chain manager, an associate professor, those are all promotions in their career field. Twice we saw a goal of organizational growth, so continuing to grow into CEO role and build a 20-person company. They're looking at growing that company to a larger size, and then the other growing her company to working with others so it starts making money. So while both of those are kind of specific as far as the company size, they're both organizational growth. One is looking at a fiscal marker, and the other is looking at an employee size as a marker. And then the last theme, career prestige, we saw that frequency once. That was with the participant who was looking to publish another book. Statistical significance. This was a tough one for me. Statistics is not my jam, so to speak, but as much as people may not use statistics all the time, it's very important into making important business decisions. Statistics allows us to take data and information and utilize that to make important business decisions. We see just an example of how we look at that in this scenario. So we're trying to determine if there's a statistically significant difference in the political persuasion from a group of students, for students as opposed to professors. So in order to determine that, we've taken a random sample from the population, 20 students, 20 professors, and polled them to see if they are conservative. Our results from that are that 10 professors say they're conservative, 6 students say they're conservative. First, we want to determine what our null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis is. Our null hypothesis is that the proportions are equal, so that the ratio of students who are conservative is at the same ratio as the professors who are conservative. Now, we know obviously that 10 out of 20 of the professors are conservative and 6 out of 20 of the students are conservative. What we don't know is, does that difference of 4 participants, does that really matter? Is it essentially equal? And so that's what we're going to assess here. Our professors are going to be our P1. We determine first the ratio of that. So 10 conservative professors out of 20 means our ratio is 0.5. For our students, which is P2, 6 out of 20 are conservative. That gives us a ratio of 0.3. We are assuming that the population is normal and it's randomly selected because of the information that we're given. So we're going to use the t-test. When we pull the proportion, look at the entire group of participants as a whole, we find that we have 16 conservative and there were 40 polled, so that makes our ratio for the entire group, the entire participants, 0.4. So we're going to use that information to calculate our standard error, so we can use that for the t-test. We determine that is 0.1549, and then we use that standard error in our formula for the z-test, which is 1.29. Because this is a two-tailed test, we look at the p-value and we determine that our p-value is 0.1980. So we're looking at now we see that our p-value is higher than a general level of significance. So because it's higher than a general level of significance, we have to conclude that we can't reject the null hypothesis. If we go back and look at what our null hypothesis is, that is that the proportions are equal. So we cannot reject that. And we determine then that it is statistically significant.